I'm just on a walk outside. I was watching a YouTube video of Jack Osborne, and I watched his channel quite a bit, maybe a month ago or 2 months ago. I can't remember exactly. And he covers all different types of subjects. And he was talking about his recovery from being a drug addict for a while. I think he said 20 years. And I think everybody to some degree is addicted to something. But so I have my own opinion of kind of how things like drug addiction could be handled. I once heard just switching locations can give people enough of a relief to get off something. Or I find, well, so this is what I wanted to get at, because he talked about psilocybin or ayahuasca, which was kind of what Aaron Rodgers had talked about too. I myself am fine. But here's kind of what I'm getting at. So these trips or these trances or these hallucinogens, these experiences, they either relieve trauma, make you understand trauma, maybe they change the chemical imbalance in your head. That's kind of something people talk about. I find, so I'm fluent in Spanish and French, and I find just the right type of inspirational content or something funny or something educational can totally alter how I feel for quite some time. And therein, I think, is this sort of trip, if you will, this alternation or kind of different feeling of the world around you, which is very much, I think, what many folks are searching for. I had said too that I think people who only speak one language crave discovery or crave kind of the feeling of getting to something different, that they kind of feel like they're walled in. I do think another language allows you a chance to kind of tune in to something else and to kind of change the tune. And to me, that is sort of maybe the hallucinogen too. It sort of gives you a chance to reframe, even though you feel very much walled in. I'm just kind of speaking extemporaneously. I'm speaking off the cuff. But that is, I think, like just speaking Spanish or listening to Spanish and something inspirational can motivate me and can even give me kind of like a special motivation, because English for me was too much science. I'm sorry to say that, but English for me was too much science, too much like, do you have the answer, and not enough just discussion about life. And I think it's no wonder that so many English speakers find themselves reaching for something, trying to kind of get out of whatever they're locked into or whatever has sort of dominated their mind. I think there's too, in a world where people very much want to be like high and mighty or in something more artistic or something a little bit more dreamlike, which is essentially cinema or TV shows. When people, or fantasy, people crave something that's more fantastical than what had been kind of pushed through in like the 90s and the 2000s. Like if anyone remembers, Barack Obama was like on the fence or something about saying he was Christian or something like that. And we were very much in sort of a, I think that's why I felt so horrible, because I'm very much like a worshiper. And I think I'd say just about everybody is, when it comes down to it. People would, and I'm not saying people aren't warriors or people aren't leaders or what have you. But yeah, I think too, the there's like two things going on. There's the worship of the other, and then there's the fear of the other. So like, I think the right-wing people are the fear of the other, and the left-wing people were sort of the worship of the other. And I think there was something in America where we were not really treating ourselves correctly and kind of not really honoring our culture. And we were kind of going down a path of no art. I don't know, we could still be. No art. There was a period too where I had read all sorts of negative stuff, and it had sort of mounted up all this negativity. And that's why I say, boy, am I glad I have my foreign languages, because those give me a chance to circumvent what would otherwise be many kind of, I dare say, psychological sort of like psychological traps. I've encountered them on the internet many times over, which is sort of spooky, being in a cold environment where like the internet is really helpful. It's kind of spooky when the internet becomes kind of that psychological warfare, dominion, misery outlet, and kind of tries to hone in or home in on you. I say too, once you see how laser focused it can be, you start to wonder. I had said when AI came out, I had felt, man, I wish I were in a warm environment. Just because being outside is such a relief if the computer becomes toxic. And I find too, because I had Well, so I want to get back to the psychological trauma. So I think maybe tune out, but I'm not going to yell or anything. But I think our education leaves people wanting. I think our education leaves people feeling like they've got nothing special, no specialty, that they're not really anyone, and that they just got kind of past they just got past like a kind of boring, unhappy requirement that is kind of unfortunate or something. I actually think I had a pretty good public school education, but it was in many ways not as good as probably what other people had. But like I said, I'm sort of a self-motivated learner. But yeah. So to me, back to this like drug-induced kind of like hallucinogen trip that's supposed to fix psychological trauma. I myself wouldn't do that. No. I think a change in environment and just learning something new, or switching up the way you do things, will go very far. I'm not opposed though to hearing about it, and that's kind of what I was getting at. I found it interesting to hear about what Billy Bush said he did and what Jack Osbourne said he did, which was ayahuasca. Long story short, or not long story short, but I think it would be negative. I do. I'm so sorry to say that. I wonder if it just kind of, I don't know. I wonder if someone told me too that the trip essentially kind of is sort of euphoria, so everything else kind of fades away. I forget what someone else told me. Or the concept of a good trip and a bad trip. Like I said, I would never do it. But yeah. In my opinion, the thing to do is to read a book, do something physical. For me, programming, learn a language, maybe come up with a diagram for some pie in the sky invention. It could be all sorts of stuff. I think too, there's a lot to there's like so much else that could be done other than just kind of like thinking that one drug could fix another. I'm sorry to say that, but that is kind of what I think. A lot of people want it's a very much, I think, an English speaking thing or concept. It's like the limitless drug. I remember it's Adderall. It's like people take Adderall or people do this or that to cram or to focus. And I'll have a drink or I'll smoke something and I'll have a good time or I'll write something down. But to me, I don't think there's much to be gained from doing one of those trips. But if the people think that it helps them, then I say more power to them. And I'd love to hear how it helped them. Because for my dad, I wanted my dad to learn German. I think that would have been a really good thing for him to do a long time ago, is to learn German and to go to Germany and to, I don't know if he has to talk to a ton of people, but to at least go to like a bar and kind of just see how the Germans live. And yeah, I think going to Germany would have been helpful for him, because I think many Americans carry a sort of feeling of being trapped. A country with no safety net, that didn't have a border, whose leaders wanted to do away with police. A country, too, whose technology is getting ever more potent. And some of the technology leaders even say technology is eating the world. Well, I said I'm a technologist. My technology doesn't eat, but it will help you. It will take your input and it will give you helpful output. It won't eat anything. You're lucky. I don't think that way. I remember though when I was at RBC Wealth Management and I had used AI for a while, and I thought about like all these roles, and I thought this could all be AI. And then, maybe don't listen. And then I thought people could be like data points in like their own little metaverse, in their own little kind of like cave or container, and that they were just sort of stored away and kind of floating off. And there might be, I don't know, I'd have to go back to that point in time and think about it. There was some weird like spatial thing I was feeling. It was very interesting. It was like these people were in essentially databases and were just kind of gonna float away. Maybe don't listen. It was interesting. And I thought too, it was kind of sad, ultimately. That's why I would say if AI were to come through and replace this or that, the person who did this or that, I would definitely find a place for them. And I would, because AI is, in my opinion, a tool of convenience, a tool of growth. It's not a tool of whack-a-mole. And it's not a tool of, in my opinion, replacing people. The whole reason we're here is to appreciate our time together. That's why, and I think too, if people feel like they're kind of frazzled, it very well could be a situation of noise. And I could talk about that too. Noise, like sound, which could be like street noise. Maybe don't listen to this. Street noise, planes, helicopters. It could be like a creek, and I'm not talking about water. I'm talking about like creaky something. It could be all sorts of stuff, because I think the world did get a bit of noise pollution. I do. There have never been so many planes in the sky, and there's never been so much information passing before you. So there are several things at play. But yeah, and I think a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not, there was a loss of art, and history kind of hit a point where we were sort of turning on our foundation, which is like Greco-Roman, the West, like in architecture, symbols, our religion, like who we are. And I think in many ways, there was sort of probably on both sides a feeling of despair. I say to the right-wing people who think they need a gun, I think that would drive me nuts. To the left-wing people who kind of have an axe to grind, that would drive me nuts too. And I remember when I was at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and I had courses where they would sort of talk about how this structure or that structure works against like the average American, and I don't agree with that type of thinking. I really don't. I think that type of thinking, I would use AI to get rid of that. Because now that we have AI, which is really something special, I see AI as a gift. AI is something that allows you to decipher, to summarize, to translate, to generate, to like the use cases in, well, so I could build something tomorrow. So like I just had an idea pop into my head. I'm not gonna say it though. I'm not gonna say it. But I definitely am gonna write it down. So to me, the possibility with AI is great. I think AI, I totally agree with Mark Cuban. He goes, if I were a young person, I would learn AI, and learn AI. Or how to use AI. And yeah, I'm right there too. I think the basics will never go. Reading, writing, arithmetic, geometry, algebra. Like knowledge of the past. All that stuff, that's not going anywhere. I love to, so through French, I can tune into people venerating the past and biographies, and I got it in English, but it was through the far right, and it was very much reactionary, and it didn't have a good feeling, unfortunately. It had sort of a feeling of misfortune to it, but I don't know, at least you get to learn that stuff. Like there was a lot on, like, I don't know, that was an interesting time with the alt-right. I have to say, I don't know, I wouldn't go to one of their things, but I do listen to them from time to time. Not really anymore, but I did quite a bit. I'd say here's really what I like. I like the past and tuning into something that's sort of maybe even fake. That is what I like. Like the idea, maybe don't listen to this, the idea that there's another continent, or that the world, maybe don't listen to this. Maybe don't listen to this. The idea that the world's flat, all sorts of stuff. Maybe demons, maybe other stuff. I don't know, that stuff's interesting. I say though, I would totally get rid of people wearing goth clothes and all sorts of other stuff. All right, that's all I got. I'm just kind of chatting. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.